This is Wildcat Country.
Larson tipped it. Love has it. Lewis slams it, and Arizona wins it.
The inside scoop on the Arizona Wildcats.
It's Gunnar Maldonado. He's got blockers. Touchdown, Arizona.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to bear down.
Welcome to another edition of Wildcat Country presented by Harrah's Auction Casino. Eric Cohen and Shane Dale, and it's a Wildcat win, I guess, tonight. Well, not I guess. Happened they beat Utah. They won by, 18?
17.
Nice win. 17. Okay, so
they
covered the line. Yeah, they covered the line on a late three-pointer. So way to go, Grant Whiteman. I think it was him that hit the three to cover the spread. For those, I didn't bet it, but those who might have, congratulations, you probably covered the line. Nonetheless, Shane, a lot to talk about on this show. Levi Stevenson from the Iowa State fan site going to join us later in the show in segment number 2, and he'll make some picks looking ahead to Arizona and Iowa State this Saturday. You were at the BYU game, so we're going to talk about that. We won't spoil it yet. Let's get to right to Shane's standouts, and then we'll get to it. So start with Shane's standouts.
Yeah, and just for those who are new listeners, and first of all, thank you. But the whole point of the mentioning the standouts is to really highlight a lot of great student athletes who don't necessarily play football or men's basketball, because we that's the two sports obviously we focus on the most. Although I do have one men's basketball player in this one, but that's kind of the whole idea. I would like to spread the love a little bit. Start with the women's basketball team. Isis Bay had 33 total points on 12 of 22 shooting and 13 rebounds in Arizona's wins over at Houston in overtime and at home against Texas Tech to help Arizona improve to 9-8 in the Big 12. Real quick, before the Arizona BYU game started, they were showing the end of the women's game at Houston on the big screen, and there was a collective groan like 10 minutes before the men's game started when Houston brattled in a three-pointer to send it to overtime. So we didn't quite get to see the end of it, but I saw the score afterwards. So a couple wins for Arizona, still probably on the outside looking in for the NCAA tournament, but maybe they'll surprise us in the Big 12 tournament. On the softball team's off to a great start. Devin Netz was the Big 12 pitcher of the week after she struck out 14 batters over the weekend and held opponents to a 151 batting average. She hit a pair of home runs too. She's Arizona's first conference pitcher of the week, Eric, in 4 years, which is kind of hard to believe.
Yeah,
Alyssa Denham was the last one, who was a guest on our show back in the day. But congrats to Devin. The softball team's off to a great start. They're 16-2. One of their losses came in extra innings against number 1 Texas last weekend, so they're off to a great start. Good for them.
Inside the top 10 as well. We'll talk a lot about them. I think once basketball season winds down, we're going to talk a lot more softball, baseball.
A lot more softball, absolutely, like we always do. Speaking of baseball, Matisse Murat. He's French. He was named the Big 12 Code Newcomer of the Week. He hit 5 for 8 with 7 runs scored, 1 double, a couple home runs, and 5 RBIs to help Arizona sweep San Diego last weekend. So Tommy Lloyd is not the only Arizona coach who knows how to recruit internationally. According to the media guide, Matisse Murat. It looks like Mathis Morant, but it's not. Okay. And I'm going to struggle even more with this, but I want to give him a shout out. That's how dedicated I am, Eric. Men's swim and dive. The 800-meter free relay team set a program record in the Big 12 Conference Championships last weekend. A time of 6 minutes, 10 seconds, 10.62. 10.62. I'm going to try these names, Eric. Ralph Daleiden, Tomas Lukminas, Hakan Naughton, and Lars Kulius. I'm sure I nailed all of those. Those were the 4 men part of the 800-meter free relay. I could have just skipped it, Eric. I could have not mentioned them.
You tried. And I
tried.
Appreciate
Okay.
Effort is the name of the game here. I will give you credit, so thank you for the attempt to try to name. That was tough. That was tough. Shane standouts.
It was.
You really went above and beyond with that.
I could have just said, Eric, you know what? We have a lot of other things to talk about. Let's just skip it this week. But I powered through it, and I'm not going to edit it. I'm just going to leave it as is, and people can make fun of me for it. It's fine.
Before we talk about your experience at McHale Center on Saturday night, let's just kind of go through an overview of a sweat-free Arizona-Utah game
Yeah.
on Wednesday night, just before we're recording this. There's really not a lot to talk about other than Caleb Love played really, really well and shot the lights out. And I had a friend text me and said, "Darn it, Caleb wasted one of his good games in a
Yeah.
game that didn't matter." Just your thoughts on what you saw tonight.
You could argue he wasted two because he had a great game against BYU as well. But
True.
yeah,
Yeah.
23 points, 7 assists, 4 rebounds against Utah. He had 27 points against BYU. Uh, and I was actually going to mention him for Shane standouts. I forgot because I got twisted. I got tied up in the men's swim and dive names. But yeah, his decision making against BYU in particular, I was really impressed with. I mean, defensively, everyone struggled. He talked about that after the game and owned up to it. But I love his decisions. He didn't just sit back and pop shots. He made some great passes. I loved him being aggressive and taking the ball to the hoop late in the BYU game and what should have been the game winning free throws. And overall as a team, they responded well. Tommy Lloyd challenged them to be better on defense. They were. I mean, Utah, they're without their head coach. They're not very good, so you have to take it with a grain of salt. But just 7 turnovers for Arizona. They had 19 points off of 12 Utah turnovers, which was a complete opposite of the BYU game. That's what really hurt them the most. They were aggressive, got to the line, made 22 out of 29 free throws. Still more threes than I'd like to see from them. I think 27 is just way too many. They made 9 of them, is what it is. And they held Utah to 7 of 26 from three. So good rebounding effort that they didn't, they other teams, not a lot, but some teams on situation might have really struggled in this kind of game, and they didn't. They put Utah away. It was a little closer than it should have been toward the end, but it was never really in doubt. So,
No, it was sweat free. And
yeah.
yeah, I mean, sure they gave up some points at the end of the game, but they're not trying, you don't want to get anybody hurt. You take guys out of the game, the bench guys, covered the line at the end of the game, so good for them. So a sweat free win. Now, let's get to the game that we all want to talk about. I know it's a few days ago, fine. You were at Arizona BYU. Just before we get anything else, your impression of McHale Center this year, because I haven't been.
Oh, it's as great as it's always been. I mean, it's loud throughout the game, especially the last couple of minutes. It went from 10 to 11. We were standing for a good chunk of the second half. I mean, Arizona fans, even though BYU was unranked, they sensed from the beginning that BYU's playing well. It's a big game, and of course, the way BYU was shooting, that it just prompted the fans to get louder. It was one of the most entertaining games I've ever seen in person.
Yeah, oh
I mean,
yeah.
it was just it was ridiculous. Just the trading shots. There were times where I was standing and Utah was about to attempt an open three, and I would just sit down before they even shot it because BYU played a heck of a game. But the atmosphere was great, other than what we'll talk about in just a minute. But I'll just share my experience. We were disappointed. We had some couple WTF moments late in that game when Caleb Love made what looked like to be an and one. I was high fiving my nephew Zach and his buddy who he brought with him to the game. We had a great time, and shout out to my nephew Zach for driving there and back. Appreciate it. But we were high fiving, thinking that was an and one because it was so loud. And then we looked up, the score didn't change, and we're like, and then our buddy Jeff Dean over the PA says Caleb Love shooting two. And we're like, what the heck? But he made both the free throws, is what it is. And then, so we were behind that basket where Arizona was shooting in the second half. And then of course, the end of the game, when the play stops, we all assumed on this side of the arena because it was so loud. We assumed that there must have been a whistle against BYU after Tobe Awaka grabbed the rebound and Arizona was about to put the game away. And then it didn't sink in for like another 20, 30 seconds that the foul was actually against Trey Townsend. And of course, we saw the replay and everyone went crazy. Like, are you effing kidding me? I probably said something worse at the time. So that was my experience. It was a great atmosphere at McHale. They don't lose there often. And BYU played a hell of a game. I mean, regardless of the finish, great game. And it was thoroughly entertaining. It was a tough ride home after a loss like that.
Boy, I've made that ride home after a lot of tough football losses, so I can understand.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about the call. I guess buy or sell. Tony Padilla got the call right against BYU.
Well, I think you know where I'm going with this. I did see one BYU fan / analyst note that he said, "Was it a foul? No. What was that called a foul the whole game? Yes." I don't know about that, but I will concede that there were a lot of bad calls in that game, a lot of ticky-tack garbage that went against both teams. That just happened to be the last one. And I don't think I'm not someone who thinks that officials should swallow their whistles late in games. I do understand, sometimes you don't want to be the story, and sometimes you have to make a call. In that case, I don't know what else Trey Townsend could have done. I think Richie Saunders, who was having a great game, did a great job of, he got himself in a lot of trouble, and he tried to basically sell a foul that wasn't there. And Tony Padilla, who was nowhere near the play, bought it hook, line, and sinker and called it. I think it was an example of great players, and this happens in the NBA too. Some of the better players get the benefit of the calls in that situation. Oh, he missed a shot that badly. There must have been a foul.
But how do you make that call from where he was on the court? That's the problem. When there's a guy that's staring right at it, that's 10 feet away, and then the guy behind the play who notoriously is all about him. I went on Spears and Ali this morning into Tucson ESPN Radio, and Ali made a point, like he's like, Tony Padilla has always been this way. He's a whiner, and he tries to make it all about himself.
Oh, and BYU fans can't stand him either. He's made so many bad calls against their program as well.
Right, but the guy, he's one of those referees that tries to take over the game. Yeah. And that tries to make it about himself.
Get in there and make it about you. He does, that meme is Tony Padilla.
Why do we allow this? Does nobody else want to be a referee and make fairly decent money that we can't find better than this clown?
Yeah.
It's an honest question.
Well, were we thinking our lucky stars when we wouldn't have to deal with the Pac-12 refs anymore? Greg Hansen, I think, made a good point though that Padilla, he was refereeing his 8th game in 9 days.
I don't care. No. Then don't do it. Then don't do it. There's plenty of other guys I'm sure that are out there. That I think is a BS, in my opinion. That is a BS narrative you cannot use to blame. He is 50 feet away. Yeah. It's not your call. It's real simple. It's not your call. I don't care how many games he's worked. It's not his call.
Yeah, it was a bad call. And like I said after the game, and I was pretty PO'd for about a good half hour after the game, and I calmed down about the time we got back to Casa Grande. But I said, look, that's not just one of those situations where you can't call that in that situation. That wasn't a foul at all, but it was not a well officiated game from start to finish. So I will say that. And I think Tommy Lloyd, to his credit, struck exactly the right note after the game and said, yeah, it was a bad call, but look, we didn't play well defensively. We better get after it and take this more seriously, or, I'm paraphrasing. But I like that Tommy Lloyd called out the officials, but also called out his own team, because the game could have gone either way. BYU played a great game, and it's a shame it came down to a nonsense call like that.
All right. My opinion, I thought BYU outplayed Arizona in that game.
Yeah, I agree.
I think they shot better, and the Wildcats, I felt, were lucky to be in the game at the end. And don't get me wrong, they probably should have won. The and one before that was not called. Padilla once again. That was an and one. Caleb Love made a great play, went to the hole and got fouled. And yep. You got to call that as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think points off turnovers were the biggest stat of the game. BYU shot great from 3 as well. They came in with a ton of confidence. They made a bunch of shots that they typically won't make. It was like Sam Decker in the Elite Eight, except it was like 4 BYU players were playing the role of Sam Decker. It was ridiculous at times. And they're on a heater right now that's probably not going to last the rest of the season, or at least into the NCAA tournament. But Arizona made some sloppy passes. BYU capitalized on Arizona's mistakes more than the other way around. Arizona never got more than a possession of separation in the second half. You'd figure at some point Arizona's going to break the game open like they always do at home, or almost always do, and it never happened. And it was another one of those games where Arizona probably got outplayed, but McHale dragged Arizona past the finish line up until Tony Padilla made the call he did.
So do you believe, I guess buy or sell, that in college basketball there should be a challenge for a late foul maybe at some point in the second half? I don't know what the rules would be on that, but something similar to the NBA, buy or sell that should happen.
Yeah, as much as I was thinking about that after the game, I'm still going to sell it, just because, well, first of all, in the NBA, you need a timeout to be able to use a challenge. And I think Arizona was out of timeouts. So
They were, but you would
point.
obviously you would use your timeouts differently
Maybe.
if that was a thing. But okay,
Maybe.
yes.
But yeah, it's tough. I'm not crazy about the coaches' challenges because I like being able to challenge things that are completely objective versus subjective. When you review in the last few seconds of a game or the last 2 minutes, I guess it is, who the ball went out on last. That's something you can review, and usually with replay you can get it right. It's pretty clear cut. Fouls get a little more into subjective territory. I think it's the same reason why the NFL tried to right a wrong by making pass interference reviewable, and they got rid of it after a year because it's so subjective. I think that I don't know. I'd want to slow the game down more. It's something that crossed my mind at the end of the game because it was just such a bad call against Arizona. But I would stay away from that in college basketball.
I actually would not. I think it's something that probably needs to happen. That's just a thing. Like I think if we're going to have, you can't have a game decided like that, and that's where Tommy Lloyd, you keep your timeout. I guess I don't know. I mean,
Maybe.
I guess it's a tough call, but I think why not one coach's challenge? I don't think it can hurt. All right. So something else happened after the game. Some negative chants from the Arizona fans. Buy or sell that the athletic department and school needs to do a better job of disciplining these students that were pictured on camera and on these videos that got posted to us.
Yeah, well, and to back up, for those who've been living under a rock, the chant was F the Mormons, except it wasn't an F. And I'll say we were on the other side of the court from the student section. I actually went with my nephew and his friend are both members of the Mormon Church. I actually joked with them as we were heading down to the game. It's like if I were to tell anyone that I'm traveling down to this game with a couple of members of the Mormon Church, they'd probably assume I was taking a couple of visiting fans because they're playing BYU. But they're both Arizona fans through and through, and it was a lot of fun hanging out with them. We didn't really hear what was said at the end of the game. I know they found out about it since then, I don't have a lot more to add. Tommy Lloyd, I think, struck the right note after in his press conference the other day about how unacceptable it was. He wasn't asked about it. He brought it up on his own. I'm glad he did. Arizona released a couple statements. Zona Zoo did too. So I don't have much more to add other than obviously it was an awful thing. Emotions run high. There's no excuse for saying something as offensive and insulting like that. As far as disciplining students, I don't know if you go back and review the video to see who said it. I don't know. I feel like you're kind of getting into the weeds.
Yeah, but you have to set a precedent, Shane.
Yeah,
somehow
I get it.
Because this made Arizona, because this got picked up nationally.
Yep.
And that you cannot have that.
Yeah. No,
we are not ASU.
No. Well, and I think Arizona fans are old enough to remember the PLO chants against Steve Kerr. Obviously,
this wasn't great. It's not a good look when it.
No, absolutely not. Regardless of the religion, you don't say stuff like that. And
not at all.
And again, I think it's over, and I think Arizona said everything it needs to say about it. And I would say also that there could have been internal discipline. I mean, if there could have been students disciplined behind the scenes.
Got to make it public. Got to make it public. So this doesn't. You have to set a precedent here.
But would you mention the students' names and embarrass them publicly? I don't know if that's necessary. As stupid as it was, I mean, do you
or simply say
that's going to get picked up by national media, and it was a stupid thing to say, but I'm not one who thinks that one stupid mistake should cost you your reputation.
You shouldn't be allowed to go to games. You shouldn't be allowed to. Your tickets should be taken away, and you shouldn't be allowed to go to games.
And maybe that's happened behind the scenes.
But then say it that Arizona needs to come out, in my opinion, and say we have told these fans they are not welcome back in McHale Center. Their tickets have been revoked. Whether that actually happens or not, you put that out there. So there is a precedent that you're going to do something stupid like that. You don't belong in McHale Center.
Yeah.
You have to do something so this doesn't happen again. That people know, hey, I don't want to lose my access to Arizona basketball or sporting events.
Yeah. No, it's not the first time there's been a vulgar chant from that section as well. I don't like it. I mean, I be loud, be noisy, try to mess up the other team when they're shooting free throws, all that good stuff. But try to keep it. I mean, not just try to keep it classy. You keep it classy, period. I know it was a frustrating way to lose the game. I know that the BYU players were jawing with members of the student section on their way out, but you just can't have that. And hopefully at some point we'll have a chance. We've been trying to get Desiree Reed-Francois to join us on the podcast. I know she wants to. It's this area of her schedule is very busy, but at some point when we get her on the podcast, we'll ask her about that. What happened as a result of this? Is there protocol in place to ensure it doesn't happen again, and there are consequences in place?
Speaking of the post-game festivities or not, the NCAA needs to do away with the handshake line, buy or sell.
Yeah, Tom Lilley was asked about that as well, and we saw what happened, the BYU game, and then the ASU game, obviously as well. And Tom Lilley said he likes the post-game handshake line. He thinks it's a chance to show respect and just maybe keep things in proper perspective. You battle hard, but then at the end of the game, it's you respect your opponents. I agree with it. I know the NBA doesn't do it, but I kind of like that the NCAA is not the NBA. I think it should keep happening. I think it's a chance to just show maturity among young student athletes and show respect. So I would keep it in place. Maybe there's going to be some talk about doing away with it. There's been a number of incidents over the last few years, but they're pretty few and far between. And so I would keep it. I think it's a nice tradition that college basketball should keep.
Yeah, I don't love it. Could take it or leave it, to be honest with you. So I'm semi-buy. I mean, I guess just it's not something that
don't care.
Yeah, don't care. Right.
That's fair.
We're going to talk, we're going to make picks in the second segment. We're going to talk a little football, and I want to ask you about baseball in the third segment. But as always, Wildcat Country is brought to you by our friends at Harrah's Auction Casino. Bear down, Wildcat fans, because it's time to spin to win up to $6,000 at Harrah's Auction Casino. It's easy to sign up for Caesars Rewards, play your favorite slots, and earn entries to spin the wheel for your chance to win up to $6,000 in free slot play. What's even better, you'll get $10 in free slot play just for signing up. And the more you play, the more entries you'll receive. So get ready to spin to win. Only at Harrah's Auction Casino, play for all. Our buddy Mike Kintner, the GM of Harrah's Auction Casino, is going to join us on the program next week. I believe he went to Kansas undergrad and Arizona postgrad. So we're going to have an interesting discussion with Mike, assuming that he is able to make our time next Wednesday when we have it scheduled. But coming up next, let's talk to Levi Stevenson and some Iowa State goods coming up here on Wildcat Country. All right, Shane, this has to be the best name of a site that I've ever heard related to Wildcat Country. Levi Stevenson from Right Natty Lite, the Iowa State fan site, joins us here on Wildcat Country. All right, Levi, I mean, a lot of questions. We'll talk about where the name came from and all. But in typical Arizona fashion, and I know Shane and I could be pessimists on the show, so be it, but it feels like that Iowa State has been without a couple of their top players. They've lost 2 in a row. And let me guess, for Saturday's game against Arizona, you're going to be completely healthy.
Well, that's the idea anyways. It's because Milan Momcilovic was out for a good part of the first chunk of conference play, including the last matchup with Arizona. And they started out okay, and then actually that damn shot we'll never talk about again. Went in and then kind of had bad vibes there for a week or two, just because it seemed like the team was a little off and the injuries were finally starting. The injury to Milan was finally starting to catch up a little bit. Teams were catching on how to throw Iowa State's offense off a little bit. And then as soon as you get Milan back, you have about one game where they're healthy, and then Curtis Jones goes down because he's got the flu, and now Keyshawn Gilbert's been out a couple games because he's got a leg injury. And from what I understand, Kurt and Milan they both played last one. Actually, and on top of all that, Taman Lipsy has been playing with a broken thumb for the last month, and he will through the rest of the season. Kurt Jones and Milan Momcilovic both played against Oklahoma State last night. Bad game, but they played. You could tell Kurt was still not 100% at all. You could tell he was still not feeling well. From what I understand is that Keyshawn probably could have played, but they didn't think they would need him last night. But obviously, maybe they did. But my anticipation is on Saturday that I believe everybody will be playing. How close they are to their individual 100%, I don't know. How close can Taman be when he's got a broken thumb on his shooting hand? How close can how close can Keyshawn be when he's been out for about a week and a half now with a leg injury. Kurt's coming back from the flu. Ideally, they should be as close to 100% as they've been since basically December. So, that's the hope, and I think that's the plan right now. But we'll see. It's been a tough couple months here.
Yeah, Levi. Well, first of all, the wide right part of your podcast name is a bit triggering as a Buffalo Bills fan. But that aside, thanks for joining us. And I asked Joe Lopez with the Tortillas and Takes Texas Tech podcast this question, and I'll ask you too, just because we're getting to know our new friends in the Big 12. Is Iowa State, from your perspective, more of a football school or a basketball school, and has that changed at all in recent years?
Historically, Iowa State is definitely a basketball school. If you look at the last 125 years of Iowa State football, it's been one of the worst one of the worst programs in the Power Five, along with Kansas State and a handful of other programs. But basketball has been fairly consistently good for most of that time. I mean, haven't won any national titles or anything like that, but been a respectable basketball program for a very long time. And they've had their down years like every program has, but for the most part have been a basketball school. I think you're still a basketball school right now, but I think football program has made up a lot of headway in the last decade or so with Matt Campbell, and then they win a Fiesta Bowl against Oregon in 2020, and now this year you go 10-2, then finish 11-3 with the Pop-Tart Bowl win over Miami, which is nice accomplishment there. I mean, I think you're still lean basketball school just because that's what it's historically been, and you still have a very good basketball program right now. So it's it's much closer to even than it ever has been, but I would say probably still leans towards a basketball school. But it's an interesting question because you don't see a lot of football programs anymore that you don't get to see their rise from the ashes, or rise from the ground level. Basically, a lot of the consistent winners we have in college football now have been good for a long time. They had their come ups in the 20s, the 30s. Michigan and Ohio State and all these they've been good since World War One. And even you go to like Clemson and Florida State and all those programs, they've been good since the 70s or the 80s at least. So I don't know that Iowa State will ever get to that kind of status, but Iowa State is the most recent consistent winner that we've seen just kind of pop up. Every program's had a couple years here and there. Lots of programs have had a couple fun years, and then they kind of drop back down. You look at like the first, Arizona. I'm not trying to throw shots, but a couple fun years, but some lean years. But you look at like the first Greg Schiano run at Rutgers, fun for a really few, for a few years, had a really great couple years, and then they went back to being an embarrassment, and now they're just now coming back up a little bit. And there's a number of other programs that have kind of had their little moment in the sun and kind of drop back down. But for the last decade or so, Iowa State's been pretty consistent. They've been 7-8 wins, 7-8-9 wins, and now 11 wins. And the program is still continuing on an upward trajectory. So it's an interesting one because we haven't, this is, what we're seeing with Iowa State over the last decade turning into a consistent winner over a decade time frame, which is a not insignificant time frame. This isn't a couple fun years. This is a pattern now where you have kids that are in high school now where virtually their entire conscious sporting, fandom has been with Iowa State being good at football, which is not something that Iowa State's ever been able to have before. So right now, Iowa State's kind of the cool program in the state. Iowa was for a long time, but right now, if there's a sexy program in the state of Iowa, it's probably Iowa State right now.
Yeah, and you got a lot of Arizona kids who are Arizona fans who don't know what it's like to have a consistently good football program. That sounds heavenly to like a team that 7 or 8 wins every year. Sign me up. Going back to the game and the shot that shall not be named. I think the consensus beyond obviously the crazy ending of that game from Arizona fans was that Iowa State is every bit as good as advertised. I mean, it's a game obviously they should have won, and they weren't 100% healthy like they haven't been for a while. What was the reaction from the Iowa State side? I mean, obviously the half court shot going in is one thing, but
throw myself in traffic.
but I'm just wondering what the overall take was on Arizona's program, just in terms of the ability, and just I'm always curious to see, because we always, we watch more Arizona basketball than any other team. What's the Iowa State's perspective on how good this team is this season?
Oh, I mean, I think in general, both programs have a ton of respect for each other, especially this season. They're it's pretty hard to look at Arizona and not respect the basketball program, and there's a great reputation there. They're if they're not one of one of the blue bloods in college basketball, they're certainly right there, blue blood adjacent. So there's a lot of respect there, and I know a bunch of people that went to that game in Tucson, and everybody had great things to say about the arena, about the atmosphere, because the Big 12 for a long time, Allen Fieldhouse and Hilton Coliseum are well known to be very, very good college basketball arenas. And, you hear ESPN, Fran Fraschilla loves talking about those two, especially as two of his favorite arenas in college basketball. And so we're used to having really, really good home courts in the Big 12, especially with our own. But everybody that I heard that went there was like, yeah, Arizona's Arizona's arena is legit. That's a legit home atmosphere that belongs in the same conversation as Allen Fieldhouse and Hilton Coliseum. So
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, a lot of respect for both programs. I think this will be a fun yearly matchup. We've established a good a fun yearly rapport with Houston now, with Houston being really good, and we've always had Kansas and a couple other programs, but I really think Iowa State and Arizona is I don't know about rivalry, but it's a good yearly matchup that not just the two fan bases, but the whole conference can look forward to on a regular basis on getting these two teams playing each other.
As somebody that hears a lot of rumors about your coaches leaving, from Matt Campbell every year, going to take another job. Now you got TJ Otzelberger, rumored Indiana and everywhere. What's your take on all that?
Nonsense. Absolute nonsense. Jeff Goodman is talking out his ass when he's talking about if he has nothing connecting TJ Otzelberger to Indiana other than his hopes and dreams, because everybody else is trying to make Indiana happen again. We all have to sit here and pretend like Indiana is a blue blood of college basketball anymore, but they're Nebraska. That's what they are. They're the Nebraska football of college basketball.
It's a good analogy. Most kids going to college.
Yeah. Most kids going to college today do not remember a time when Indiana was an elite college basketball program. You look back, I mean, they had a couple years in the early 2000s, but really since then they've been a fine program, not bad, but they've been fine. But they do not, that program no longer, to the outside world, to the kids that they're recruiting now, Indiana as a college basketball program does not have the allure it ever used to have. Because right now, aside from the money, what's the advantage to playing at Indiana over Iowa State? Iowa State's got every bit as good of a home arena. They've got they play in a better conference. I'm just going to straight up say it. I mean, the Big 12 is just better than the Big 10. It's not even really arguable. It's a better conference, better home arena. You've got better opponents. If you look at the Big 10, what kind of marquee opponents are you looking at in that conference right now? Michigan State, Michigan. Illinois, I guess, is fine. I don't know. But you play in the Big 12, you've got Arizona, you've got Kansas, you've got Houston's really great right now. And, Baylor just won a national title a few years ago. And, you've got, and Texas Tech is really good. There's a lot of really high-end programs in the Big 12. But what all of that is less important than the fact that TJ has spent about 85% of his professional career coaching in Ames. He was an assistant going back to Greg McDermott. He's an assistant under Greg McDermott here. He was there here under Fred Hoiberg. He was there at the beginning of Steve Prohm, and he is back here now. His wife is a Cyclone legend. That dude, he's from Wisconsin, but all of his roots are in Ames, Iowa. He wants to be here. TJ believes he can win a national championship at Iowa State. There is nothing I don't even know what any program would have to offer to get TJ out of Ames, but it'd have to be monumental. The guy was created in a lab to coach basketball at Iowa State.
All right, and that's awesome. We kind of feel the same way about Tommy Lloyd, and I was reading an article on ESPN, And Tommy Lloyd's name was in there. And it's like, all right.
They just
Tommy Lloyd, yeah.
they just throw names out there to get clicks. That's all it is. I mean,
All
the
right.
same way they've been doing it with Matt Campbell for a decade. I mean, that's just
So
what it is.
what is the floor for a successful season in your mind for Iowa State basketball? Obviously, the ceiling is national championship, Final Four, etc. What's the floor? The least far that they could go in the tournament where you're like, hey, it's a good year.
This year,
Yeah.
if everybody's healthy, assuming everybody gets healthy and stays healthy, a healthy Iowa State, I think the floor. Gosh, I'd be pretty disappointed if they didn't make an Elite Eight. Just to be honest, I mean,
All right.
but if they're fully healthy, I mean, I'm putting money down for them to get to a Final Four and potentially win a national title. I mean, they are that good. I mean, we saw back in Maui when they were up 20 at halftime over Auburn, and they ended up giving that game up because Auburn had played a bunch of extra games and obviously just wasn't conditioned for that kind of game just yet. But they can play with anybody. That when the team is fully healthy and ready to go, they can play with and beat anybody in the country. So, it's all going to depend on the health. Just fact of the matter, because they just haven't been healthy for basically all of conference play, and they've still managed to put together a decent conference record. But there's some extra losses in there you don't want. Last night losing to Oklahoma State's a bad loss. You'd like to win that Arizona game. You'd like to win a few other ones too. But it's the Kansas State game. Gosh, if they're healthy, Elite Eight. If something's missing, who knows? Because they can play really well when they're down a guy, but the in this case the some of the parts is much greater. The whole is much greater than the sum of the parts on this team. If you lose Kurt Jones, you lose your best shooter, your best scorer. If you lose Taman, you lose your best defender. You lose your best guard defender and your point guard. If you lose Milan Manchilovic, you lose a super versatile scorer that teams really have to game plan around. You lose Keyshawn Gilbert, you lose your best attacker. You lose your best rim attacker. And that all of those change the dynamics of the whole offense, and they have to retool. It changes the spacing. We saw when Milan was out that the spacing was a major issue, because at that point, most of the time on the floor, you were accounting for really one high-end shooter, and you still got a guard Keyshawn out there, but you're really only having to deal with Kurt Jones pulling guys away from the rim. So having Milan in there makes them pull two guys away from the rim, which is much easier for Keyshawn to get to the rim, because he's a true blue slasher. And he can hit the outside shot, but he is a slasher. That's what he is. When you have we have an extra guy sitting in the paint because they don't need to cover a shooter, that makes life a lot harder for him, makes life a lot harder for everybody else. So, the fully healthy version of Iowa State is a finely tuned machine of defense and scoring. But when one piece goes down, especially a guard, that's a problem because it just changes everything. So yeah, like I said, if they're healthy, Elite Eight's the floor for me to not feel disappointed, especially because they've had a couple like get to the Sweet 16 and then flame out against some really good team or something like that. There's just the Sweet 16 has a little bit of a glass ceiling on it right now for Iowa State, and this team is plenty good enough to smash through that if they're healthy. But
yeah, and Arizona's been that way with Tommy Lloyd. We've gotten the Sweet 16 twice, lost to a very good underseeded Houston team a couple of years back, and then lost to a team that Arizona should have beaten in Clemson last year. Real quick, Levi, I just want to, because I'm always curious again, the perception of Arizona outside of the state of Arizona. Do you know, or do you want to guess the last time Arizona made a Final Four?
Is this a trick question?
It's not. I'm just curious, and I'm not trying to make it look good or bad. I just want to see.
No, it's an interesting question because, let's see.
Without looking it up,
a Final Four. Gosh, I feel like I've put them in the Final Four in a number of brackets over the years.
Yeah. So you and Charles Barkley.
Gosh, I mean, I'd have to say he'd be in the 2014, 2015 range.
Yeah, and that's why I think the perception of Arizona basketball, because I mean the team's usually very good in the regular season, but Arizona hasn't made the Final Four since 2001,
Really?
The Elite Eight 5 times since then.
Hmm.
Not to the Final Four since 2001. So I'm always curious to see because I feel like the Arizona's brand is better than certainly at least what they've done in the tournament in the last at least
Well,
since Eric and I went to school there.
worth noting, anyways, is that the Big 12, as it currently sits, is tougher than the Pac 12 has been for the last
Ab-
20 years. So
Absolutely.
you're getting a much, they might not be as high a seed right now. They're not as dominant in the regular season as they have been, but you're going to have a much more battle tested team going into the tournament. So
Absolutely.
that's worth something.
Yeah.
And then really you're hoping that Caleb Love gets hot and starts carrying you through. But
Yep.
who knows?
Who knows? Yeah, he's a roll of the dice every time. But yeah, I'm just curious on that because it really has been way too long for a program that's I guess has as much pedigree as Arizona does. My last question for you, I know we're going to get into some picks soon, but assuming that Keyshawn Gilbert does play and Iowa State is healthy, what will Arizona have to do in order to keep the Cyclones, who are very good at home, the K-State game notwithstanding, to keep Iowa State from getting some payback on Saturday?
Arizona is going to need to. I think the best way to attack Iowa State, generally speaking, on when you're playing defense and Iowa State's on offense, I think the best way to attack them is to really put a lot of pressure on, especially on their forwards, because they like to run through the post with Josh Jefferson, and he's a good distributor out of there, but his handle can get a little bit loose in the post sometimes. And the last month or two, especially with the injuries, Iowa State's been a little bit turnover prone, more than usual. And if I'm Tommy Lloyd, the first thing I'm telling him on defense is active hands. You're trying to poke stuff out. You're trying to, you don't need to gamble and try to jump lanes, but Iowa State will throw some lazy passes around the outside. They're not. Keyshawn is the only one on the team that's an aggressive slasher towards the rim. A lot of guys, they'll run some slow action and they'll try to do a little pick and roll thing, but it's not very. It doesn't really get downhill very well. If I'm Arizona State, I'm cutting off of screens. I'm chasing Kurt over top of the screen. Chasing Kurt Jones off the 3-point line. I'm getting in their face and I've got active hands and I'm trying to poke the ball away because like I said, Iowa State will throw some. They'll throw some lazy passes around the perimeter. There'll be times where they get a little disorganized and they can turn the ball over there and they can be vulnerable. When Iowa State's on defense, the best thing Arizona can do is ball movement, ball movement, ball movement, and keep guys moving around all the time. And really you really need to keep an eye out for skip passes and things like that. Because when you're playing that no middle defense, you've got help defenders coming flying around all over the place. And it's easy to get lost in the sauce a little bit. And you just throw one away. And you're like, oh, this guy should be open. And then all of a sudden, Taman Lipsy picks it off and goes the other way with it. You really got to keep your head on a swivel and keep an eye out for those skip passes. And if you get an open shot on the 3-point line, you need to take it. You need to have a quick trigger and get rid of it right away because they will close down on you, and then chase you and try to chase you off the 3-point line. So that's what Arizona needs to do. If they're fully healthy, that's on defense. It's going to be a matter of containing Keyshawn on his drives because there will be a little bit more space in the lane with Kurt and Milan being on the wing. So it's when they're fully healthy, Iowa State's a bear to deal with, but we got to see.
All right, let's make a few picks here before we let you go. This is what Shane and I do every week. Shane, you and I was not our best week here. We did not. Arizona won the line was 14.5 tonight against Utah. They won by 18. So we're going to count that as a no cover for either of us. You had 14, I had 12.
Oh, geez.
So what we like to do, Levi, is we're going to pick a Big 12 unranked road win team that teams that is not in the polls getting a win on the road. Who you got?
Oh, let's go with. Let me look at my Big 12 schedule here real quick. So let's see.
Shane, while he's looking it up,
I'll throw mine in. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go with our rivals to the north. Levi. I'm gonna go with ASU over Utah. Devils. They look like as we're recording this, they're about to get beat by BYU. But they've looked a little better since BJ Freeman was let go. Go figure. Utah struggling without its head coach. They seem a little deflated against Arizona. So I will reluctantly take the Devils to get the win on the road.
I'm also going to take Utah to piggyback off that to lose at home. But I'm going to take early next week West Virginia as they're still in the mix for a tournament berth to beat Utah on the road. All right, Levi, what do you got?
Give me Give me West Virginia to pick off BYU on the road. Javon Small's is
Wow.
a really nice player that I think he should be. I think right now I think it's kind of a joke that Hunter Dickinson is currently sitting at Ken Palm's #1 player of the year. I think Javon Small right now is the Big 12 player of the year. They're
Wow.
tough. Darian DeVries is a really good really good coach. I think that's one they can steal is in Provo.
All right, let's talk about a ranked team that's going to lose this weekend. Shane, who is it?
I'm going to take Vanderbilt over Missouri, and I made this pick before Vandy got their big win at number 12 Texas A&M. They're in much better shape now to make the tournament. They were projected 10 seed on ESPN before this. Still not quite a lock. A win over Missouri would be a big deal. Might just lock it up for them. And Vandy is 13-2 at home this season, so I'm going to take Vanderbilt to get the win.
All right, Levi, who you got as your top 25 team that is going to, you can't use Kansas, Texas Tech. That's what I was going to use, and I realize this is a non-Big 12 thing, so I got to find a new one while you make a pick here. Anyone that stands out to you that's going to go down?
Texas A&M is going to lose to Florida this weekend.
Well,
Which
but
is
see, but you got to give me an unranked team that's going to beat a
a
ranked
ranked
team.
team losing to an unranked team. Gotcha,
Right.
gotcha. Okay, give me this is a tough one.
This is a tricky one. I mean, it's probably going to happen, but there is a lot of ranked versus ranked and such. So I
Sure,
was going to go. I think
right.
Shane got the best one on the board that I would say, but for me, I'm gonna give you a random one, and I'll give you a chance to look. I'm gonna take Virginia, who just went on the road at Wake Forest tonight. I think they're gonna beat Clemson at
Hmm.
home. It's kind of a random one,
Hmm.
but give me Virginia at home over Clemson. All right, what do you got for us?
Oh, let's see. Well, I was gonna take Oklahoma upsetting Ole Miss, but the Ole Miss is just outside the ranking now. Mhm.
You can think about that one. You
Yeah, so
skip it if need
this
be.
one I'm not 100% sure on yet. I'm not sure what I want to take my
All
pick
right,
on
all
this.
right, so let's talk about the game on Saturday. Arizona at Iowa State. Shane, I'll let you make the first prediction here. How many points will this game be decided by, and who's going to win?
Yeah, obviously the big question is because Sean Gilbert's health. Coach Jotz was pretty vague about his health and availability going forward, but I know Levi says he's confident that Gilbert's going to play. Yeah, it's kind of tough to get a feel on it, but I'm going to make the pick as if he will play. Um, Even if he doesn't, Iowa State's 14-1 at home this year. That loss to K-State was kind of an anomaly. It came right after the loss at McHale. If Iowa State's at full health, I think this is a game where Arizona could play its best and still lose. And of course, I'm sure Hilton's going to be extremely loud, especially after what happened when they met in Tucson. I like to dive into analytics to pick these games, but it hasn't been serving me very well. So I'm just going to go with my gut on this one. I think Iowa State wins a close game that's almost as entertaining as the game at McHale Center, and I'm hoping we get a rubber match in the Big 12 tournament. So I'm going to take the Cyclones. We'll say the Arizona's down three late. They miss a late three. They have to foul. Iowa State makes its free throws, and Iowa State wins by 5.
All right, Levi, how many does Iowa State win this game by on Saturday?
This is a tough one. Ken Palm's got us at 4 points. This is one where I think this feels like one where if this feels like one where it's gonna be two possessions a lot of the game, 1-2 possessions a lot of the game, where maybe Iowa State's up 4 with a minute to play, and then they get a couple free throws, and then it finishes at 10 points, but it's really more of like a 2 possession type of game, and it's a lot of garbage time points or a lot of free throw points towards the end. So I'll take Iowa State by 8, but not because it's like an 8-point game the whole game.
All right, that's fair. You know what? I just have a feeling this game is going to be kind of like the Texas Tech game for Arizona, where the game was close, and then late they kind of fell apart. Now, I don't think they're going to lose by whatever that number was, 13,
16.
14, 16, but I'm going to say Iowa State by 10. I think Iowa State, Arizona's close. I think it's back and forth till about the 6 minute mark, and then they pull away and get the win. All right, Shane. We're gonna have Levi make the first pick in this one. This is a rivalry. I don't know if you know much about Arizona State. The Sun Devils are an absolute disaster. On February 1st, they played. Arizona won the game by 9, but there was some controversy with Caleb Love and BJ Freeman, who has been dismissed from the team, getting thrown out at the end, and Bobby Hurley not shaking hands with Tommy Lloyd. So how many points does Arizona win by when they play late next Tuesday night?
I
We'll
can.
see. You go ahead, Shane. Yeah,
Want
why
me to
don't
go
you start
first?
us?
No, that's
Yeah,
fine.
go.
That's fine. No, I'm sure Levi's really invested in this game. No, this is a classic Bobby Hurley ASU team. They look great when you don't expect them to, and you think they're coming around, and then they also they follow it up with a head scratching loss. Freeman's off the team. They're essentially a 7-man rotation. I guess they went 8 against BYU. They tried to anyway. I think ASU can play its best game of the year and still lose this one by double digits. It'll be senior day. I don't think Arizona's going to have a repeat of what happened the last time they played ASU on senior day. That was the other half court
Right.
full court shot that we don't talk about. And I'm sure Caleb Love heard every word Bobby Hurley said about him after the game. He'll be fired up, and Love's been outstanding lately. I'm going to take Arizona by 15. They could certainly win by more than that. I'll be conservative and say 15.
I was going to say by 14. So you know what?
Okay.
I think your approach is interesting there, Shane. The one thing about this though, and I had a friend make a good point about this, and I kind of said this earlier in the month as well. If Bobby Hurley is not going to be brought back, and ASU's athletic department already knows this, and I don't know whether they do or don't. Why would he coach the game next Tuesday? Just let him go on Sunday. I mean, it's going to be so hostile in McHale Center. I mean,
Yeah,
we talked about some other stuff earlier in the show.
yeah, he's dealt
It's
with
going to
it
be a
before.
hostile. I'm just saying, it's a hostile
Yeah,
environment.
yeah.
Levi, you have a pick on this game?
I mean, Arizona State's not great. I also have a grudge against them for what happened in the Big 12 football game. Big
Oh
12
yeah, we
football
were
title
cheering
game.
for your
So,
Cyclones for sure. Don't in
yeah.
that game.
So after between all that and Arizona State just kind of being bad, give me the Cats by 22.
22.
I like it.
Boy, Levi,
But-
more optimistic than us.
By the way, Levi, just out of curiosity, I'm sure you saw the end of the Arizona BYU game. Was that a foul or no?
I did not see it actually.
Oh, you didn't. You're the only one
No,
of them.
No, I didn't. I was
Just say
I
it
was-
wasn't,
I'll
and
be-
we'll
I'll
move
be
on.
full disclosure here. I was actually playing Baldur's Gate 3, so I'm
Fair
a
enough.
big
Well,
gamer guy. So
well, we really appreciate having you on the show. And Arizona and Iowa State meet September 27th
I do got
in
my pick
Ames.
for. I do got my.
Oh yeah,
pick
go
for,
ahead. Yeah,
right?
give us your pick. Yeah,
Give me
upset pick.
give me Thad Matta and the Butler Bulldogs to take down St. John's in Hinkle Fieldhouse.
Oh wow,
Yeah,
bold.
Well, so here's the
tonight.
thing about
Actually, that's actually tonight. So
yeah, it's tonight,
That's
and
tough.
St. John's won the game
Son of a
76.
bitch.
So we'll let you skip that one. Nonetheless, thank you so
never
much for
mind.
joining us.
St. John's is gonna win that one.
St. John's is going to win that one, so we'll skip that one. But
You're mean.
appreciate you coming on with us,
Wanna know.
and hope to talk with you at some point. As the fall gets closer. But best of luck to your Cyclones the rest of the way.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Discover more Play for All at Harrah's Auction Casino.
Hi folks, here are your drinks.
Where having fun means racking up reward credits with the Caesars Rewards loyalty program that can be redeemed for food, free play, hotel stays, and more. Not only here in the city of Maricopa, but also at more than 50 Caesars properties coast to coast. From Harrah's Las Vegas to Caesars Palace in Atlantic City. What are you waiting for? Play for All at Harrah's Auction Casino, the official sponsor of Play.
Thanks to Levi, that was great insight, and boy, he went on and gave us a lot of.
I'm gonna
intel.
give Tommy Lloyd his that scouting report. That was extremely detailed. I'm very impressed.
Yeah, nice to have him on the program. I'm sure we'll have him back on closer to in the fall. A couple things I want to talk about. First of all, baseball. It's won 5 in a row after beating Rice here. So this weekend, Shane, they play the Astros Foundation College Classic against number 1 Texas A&M, number 18 Mississippi State, and number 3 Tennessee. So if Arizona gets swept, obviously it's not panic time. But if Arizona wins one of those, I think we got to be satisfied, right?
Yeah, I think so. And it's early in the season. And I mean, I think as you're saying that, everyone's thinking about men's basketball's early struggles. And they overcame that. And they're looking at a 4, maybe even a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament. They finished strong. So nothing wrong with playing top competition. And then they got off to a bad start. They've won their lot. They beat Rice tonight, just after we're recording this. They swept San Diego, so they're getting back on the right track. A lot of good hitting. I think the starting rotation was the big question going into the season. There's still some questions there after they lost a lot of their 3 top pitchers from last year. But got some good guys in the bullpen, a lot of good hitters. There's no reason they shouldn't be back in regionals. Again, I don't know if College World Series is realistic, but they've certainly righted the ship after a rough start, and you'd like to at least see them get one win in that tournament as well. Yeah.
I would agree with that. All right, let's talk about Duane Akina. He was Arizona's defensive coordinator last year. So remember, he had left to go to Texas, where he had previously coached back in the day. And then Arizona kind of pulled him back when Brent Brennan was hired. And so now I don't know, we don't know what went on behind the scenes, but he was demoted. So Danny Gonzalez, who was on the program last week, took over. And just your thoughts on Duane Akina leaving and how detrimental this is for Arizona's chances of having a successful 2025 season.
I wish I could say it wasn't a big deal, but I think it is. One of the best secondary coaches in college football over the last 20, 30 something years. And I think it was probably inevitable at some point he was going to go back to Texas. Seems like that's where he wants to be, and it's probably not the first time that he's left for more money there. And it's funny, we just talked to Danny Gonzalez last week about, having Duane Akina on the staff along with Joe Salavea. So that hurts. Arizona's put together a really solid staff. I think Seth Dagey coming on was a great pick. Danny Gonzalez being promoted to DC, I think was solid as well. Joe Salavea coming on. And you got everything in place. Spring football's coming up, and then this happens. It's just, there's not much you can do. Arizona just doesn't have the financial resources to compete in a situation.
Yeah, but I don't even think it's. I mean, I don't think it's a financial thing, Shane. I think regardless. I mean,
it's always a little bit financial, isn't it?
Well, but he got demoted, and so let's say all money was the same, and I assume that it was. I don't think he took a pay cut to stay at Arizona.
Yeah.
I mean, he's still getting paid a defensive coordinator-esque salary at Arizona, I would think. For him to go to Texas, listen, I understand it, but don't be surprised if other members of the defensive backfield go with him.
Yeah.
I mean, we were all excited about the Traden Stukes, Genesis Smith, Marquise Groves Killebrew. I would be, and I don't have any intel here, but I think I would be rather surprised if all three of them were back this season. It's going to be rough.
Yeah, well, and consider a lot of those guys also played for Johnny Nansen. So
yep.
That's the kind of two guys there who might try to pull them away. So yeah, I try not to overreact to these things, but it's a big deal. Duane Akina is a great coach, great position coach, more so than a DC, great position coach, and as evidenced by the fact that Texas wants him. And we got a rebuilding process in place. We were kind of hoping to bypass it, after so many guys came back to the team last year. Didn't work out that way. I think we've got not quite a full scale rebuild, but pretty close to it. And Duane Akina's departure just adds to that, unfortunately.
Not good news there, but hey, men's basketball won on Wednesday night. Things look good heading into Iowa State and ASU. Going to be a very interesting week. We're going to record next Wednesday in advance of the Kansas game. Recap Iowa State, recap ASU. Can baseball get things done this weekend? Can softball keep up their good play? And will Shane have any more tricky names to announce in Shane's standouts at the top of this show? So thanks to Levi Stevenson for joining us and talking Iowa State. For Shane Dale, I am Eric Cohen. Thanks for listening. And as always, bear down.